Welcome to Just a Cup on Bleav. I am Bryan Fetzer, and I am your host for this show. Today, I have on with me Professor Nicholas Powell, the Mind Game, who is a mental performance consultant and has works with athletes, individuals, really legitimately from all over the world. And I've known Nicholas for quite a long time, so I'm excited to dive in and talk about the mind game today. So Nicholas, hey man, it's good to have you on.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me, Bryan. It's been a while.
It has been a while, and obviously the show's called Just a Cup. So
Yeah.
it's funny, and I have to blame one of my former athletes, Zach Harriet, from really kind of transforming my coffee game or my tea game. So always have a cup of coffee and get a little shout out. They don't sponsor, just as a know, this company does not sponsor the show. Cartel Coffee in Arizona, great
Okay.
little coffee shop. Nicholas, I've got this crazy habit of all the years of traveling. I go to different coffee shops, and if I like the coffee, I buy a mug. So
Okay.
unfortunately, I have like boxes of coffee mugs from Amsterdam. I mean, we're talking Liverpool, England. I mean, I've got them from all over the place. So
Okay.
I'm a coffee guy in the morning. What gets you started? What beverage gets you going in the morning?
So I'm a tea. So right now I actually have oat milk in this, right? But I'm a tea guy. I have a ginger and turmeric tea that I
Ooh.
use, and then I'll add some cayenne pepper to it to get my circulation going. But yeah, first thing in the morning I do a bottle of water, but then the next thing is a tea.
I start off with tea. My tea happened like at 5:30 this morning.
Yeah.
But then I go to coffee around midday, have a cup, sit down, relax a lot, and enjoy things.
Yeah.
I thought maybe you were going to say like Blue Mountain coffee. The Jamaican staple.
It's great, but to be honest, Bryan, I've had coffee 5 times in my life.
What?
Yes, yeah,
Wow.
in the islands we're tea, you
True.
know,
Very
yeah,
true.
so we're big on tea, and one of the things I try not to take any substance that manipulates my that people can become dependent on.
I can appreciate that.
Yeah, so and I see how people function when they don't have their coffee in the morning.
Oh,
I'm like, yeah, I don't. Mm-mm.
I'm with you. I don't understand. We could this that's a total health kind of thing. We could
Yeah,
roll down
just
with
for health, but
what it does to your gut and all that kind of stuff if
yeah,
you don't have food in your system. There's a bunch, but I'm like I said, I'm a coffee snob. I'm actually a tea snob too. My wife, she got me into that. We
okay.
Japanese tea, Chinese tea, the
What's
herbal
your
tea is
favorite?
great.
What's your favorite tea so far? One of them, because I know there has to be a lot.
You know what I mean? From a green tea, I'm a basic guy. Just
Okay,
sencha, just a basic Japanese sencha tea.
yeah,
Um, my wife laughs. She said like if it's fruity colored, then she doesn't like it. But you know, I also like ginger tea. When you
okay,
when you say
yeah,
ginger and turmeric, this morning I had ginger, turmeric. I didn't have cayenne pepper, but I had ginger and turmeric tea at
yeah.
like 5 o'clock this morning. So
I love it. I love it. I, last before we move on, but last one is I went to Germany before going to the Olympics, and they had this hibiscus tea.
hmm,
Oh my goodness! I came back and I'm searching all over for it. I'm definitely gonna find it. It was in the hotel, but
hibiscus
I gotta
tea.
find it. Mm,
I can honestly say I've never had hibiscus tea.
oh, you got to try it. And it was amazing without even sugar.
Hmm,
Yeah,
interesting. It
yeah,
definitely has a flowery, taste, I'm
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
You mentioned this earlier, and it absolutely comes into the conversation. You being involved in the mental side of sports and mental side of life. When you do things that kind of alter your thought process.
yeah,
People will do things chemically or through other products to and it kind of changes up their thought process on things. When you're talking about changing up a thought process for an athlete, what are the first couple steps that you might go through to help them change a thought process in a natural way?
A lot of the time, individuals are not clear about their goals. When they're not clear about their goals, then the way in which they think they should go about it is sometimes all over the place. So just helping somebody be clear about their goals, and the biggest thing for me is the why behind it. It helps you to be more intentional in how you move. So the mind game, the mind is an acronym. M stands for motivation. What's your reason? Once you have established your goal, what's your reason, your motivation behind it? Once we are clear about this, how are we intentional in moving forward towards putting things in place to get in there? The N stands for becoming a nerd to your craft. Once I know what I need to do to get there, how do I now study it to become the best, to achieve mastery of the craft? So I'm studying it, becoming a nerd to it. And then the D stands for determination, making the determination and the dedication towards pursuing even when things don't look like they're going the way they need to go. Most of the time we set goals, but when things don't go the way we want it to go, we lose direction. When we're clear about why, we find a way to make it happen.
Well, and your background's in track and field, so it's one of those unique sports that pinpoint accuracy and performance are the difference between first and last in the race, or making a team, not making a team. And whereas you're a football player, a basketball player, soccer player, whatever it might be, you can screw up during a game, you can still win.
Exactly.
But as an individual sport athlete, you screw up once, you might not be able to overcome that. How does that play into talking with some of the athletes you deal with from an individual sports standpoint of, I guess, that fear potentially of making a mistake?
That's one of the reasons why. So I work with very elite athletes, right? At the highest level. And at the highest level, it's no longer about talent. Right. So because we know it's no longer about talent, it's building the confidence needed mentally to pursue, because you're doing everything to get here. I love working with athletes early, so we don't wait till we get to competition and now you expect me to give a pep talk. I don't give pep talk. I provide individuals with skills and tools, and we practice it over time. And there a line of conversation we have. What happens when things don't go the way? How do you deal with it? How do you cope with it? Right? And then my philosophy is lead with your strengths. So we're always taking the mentality that I'm going to lead with my strengths. So when I line up, and regardless of what I'm faced with, I am always leading with my strengths. When we know what our strengths are, we tend to move with a sense of a bit more confidence and a little on the arrogant, cocky side.
Right.
And when you have that, not based on I think I'm better than you because I'm talented, is I know I can, at the work I've put in, and I'm coming from that perspective, people tend to get it right most of the time.
Right.
In performance.
That's true. That's I like that. What the whole concept of your hashtag is great. It's a mind game.
Yeah.
Where did that come from? And I know you explained what the mind means, the MIND.
Yeah.
But where did that whole concept come from?
Okay, so Poppy, Victor Thomas, who was your assistant coach at Gardner Webb.
Legend. I mean, in the track and field Hall of Fame for a
Yes.
coach. I mean, what he did at Lincoln doesn't make sense. The amount of national championships doesn't make sense.
So Poppy was my high school coach. He introduced me to track and field fully because when I went to St. Andrew Technical, he exposed me. I joined the track team, and he mentored me all the way up, right? And one of the things he would always say, boss, it's your mind. Whenever we felt like we couldn't do something, it's your mind. Whenever we performed well, it's your mind. And then over time, it just kept coming in. So when I studied kinesiology at SIU Edwardsville, got my master's, there's one of the books that we had to read was Mind Gym. And in it, there was a chapter called Mind Game. And after going through that, I'm like, this would be the perfect name for my company, because I believe, and my slogan is the mind game, mentally simplifying the game. So no matter what your performance is, not just sports, but business, how do we mentally simplify it so you can build the confidence needed to move forward?
And that's so much of sport. I mean, you said, once you get to the elite level, everybody's talented.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's blessed with incredible genes, incredible abilities, and it's that finite difference between the ones that are great and the ones that sustain greatness, as opposed to the ones that are a flash in the pan. And when I mentioned that, I wanted to ask you that question, like, what's the difference between working with somebody that hasn't done it yet, as opposed to somebody that's been on that mountaintop and they're trying to stay on the mountaintop? So the up and comer versus the veteran that's kind of been there.
I take similar approach.
Okay.
Right? Because if you think, if my goal is to stay at the mountaintop, now I'm more approaching it from a defensive approach than an offensive approach.
Okay.
Right. And if I'm approaching it from a defensive, and I'm talking track and field right now, right? If I'm not aiming to go higher, so it's no longer about I'm at the top, I'm the best athlete. I'm no longer trying to beat people. I'm trying to break records. So I'm always aiming to get to the next level. So it doesn't matter where you are, it's how do we get to the next level? And what is the next level? And what does achieving the next level mean to you? Because if I'm at the point where I've achieved everything, what is there to get me to wake up in the morning to keep going? I've already achieved it. After a while, it doesn't mean nothing, right? So tapping into what is it that I have to now tap into on days when I realize nobody's close to me. How do I keep going? I can jog and still win a race. I can give subpar effort and still be competitive. How do we keep tapping into that? So my job is to help athletes, our individuals, to look at what the next one could be. And if it hasn't been created, how can we create it?
You are listening to Just a Cup on Bleav, and we're excited to have Professor Nicholas Powell, who is at McKendree University, right outside of St. Louis. He's a professor there, former track and field athlete, works with a lot of elite level athletes. Even as soon as Paris 2024, there was a bunch of his athletes competing in the Olympics there. And we're talking about the mind game. We're talking about the mental side of sports, which has really kind of taken the forefront. I mean, you start looking at athletes, Simone Biles, Michael Phelps, that have really kind of shifted mental health to a different level of recognition, per se, that people are talking about it. But there's still a stigma out there about seeing somebody about the mental side of things. And I heard you talking to Justin Gatlin on a podcast a while ago, about the stigma of seeing somebody to deal with the mental side of you. Can you, just touch base on that? Because, man, you would think that you have high profile people, Simone Biles, Michael Phelps. I mean, they were, two of the biggest athletes, iconic athletes in Olympic sports history. And they had issues that they had to work through.
Yeah.
But most people, when you say mental health, or you say mental performance, that first thing is, are you crazy? You got issues? So give me your opinion on that. And why is there a stigma?
When you hear psychology, people automatically associate psychology with mental issue, right? And one of the things that I've been working to do is educate people that, one, I don't say sports psychology, I say performance psychology, because it's not just sports, it's performance across the board. And we don't just work with individuals when something is going wrong. And that's one of the stigma we're trying to help educate coaches and individuals, that it's not just when something is going wrong, it's when it's going right. How can we bottle that and keep making it available consistently so you can build the confidence needed to pursue your personal legend? If you have read the book The Alchemist, it goes to the next level, right? How do you pursue the next level and consistently, and the confidence needed, even when it's taking on a task that you have never attempted before? How do we build that confidence? So our job is, at sports psych and mental coach and performance coach, is to help individuals understand that, like I said, it's not just when something is going wrong. You're coming back from injury. How do you build a confidence? You have won the goal. How do we keep going? Whatever it is. So getting the word out. This is what we do. It's not just when, like I said, it's not just when things go wrong, or you're underperforming.
You had mentioned, or I read an article that you'd written a while back, about identify and interpret, recognize and reprogram for peak performance. Can you explain that a little bit? Because to me, that when I read those, it instantly kind of came off to my mind. I'm like, wow, like that's a great kind of step-by-step process to kind of get there. Where did that come from? Give me thoughts behind that.
It was I had a guy working with me to help me create the website, and he helped me identify those. But pretty much identify is, like I mentioned, identify what it's going to take you to the next level. And then we're going to refocus it to help you to pursue it, to go deeper, tapping into your inner core. Example, when I work with individuals who want to lose weight or want to get in shape, right? Some of them just want to do it for a reunion, or to fit in this dress, or to look a certain way. And when we know, especially, that it doesn't, if it's achieved quickly, it's not long lasting. Right? And then when it doesn't look the way we thought it should look, it's easy to get discouraged. So when I help individuals, when they set their goals, I help them to identify the core reason behind what they're doing. So there's a book called Millionaire Success Habit by Dean Graziosi. And in this book, he has this thing called the 7 layers of why. You know, when you're driving in the car and the kids ask you a question, and you answer, and they're like, why? And you give them the next superficial answer, and they're like, why? The next superficial answer. And then after a while, now you have to get real creative to give them the answer, because you don't want to say, because I said so. Right? So you're playing along, but when you get to the 5th or 6th, you really now have to think, what's the real reason? So come back to the black dress thing, or getting to the top of the podium. It's no longer just about winning the medal. What does the medal represent to you? And what does that now allow you to do? So when you get up in the day, you're not chasing the medal, you're chasing the reason behind what you're trying to do. The reason why you're trying to get into that black dress, because it makes me feel good about myself. And when I feel good about myself, then I feel accomplished. So this is why we're doing what we're doing. So it's helping people to really tap into, I'm not just chasing it, because like I said, every day it's not going to go the way we want it to go. How do we tap into it mentally? And the training doesn't change. The workout doesn't change. The facility doesn't change. Just the mindset. And once we change the mindset, it's different.
All right. Now I'm going to give you a why question.
Okay.
You've got a jersey sitting behind you that says Jamaica on it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, I mean, the young lady from St. Lucia wins a gold medal in the Olympics. And you start going down, the Caribbean islands have had incredible success in track and field, and per capita way more than any other countries that there are, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Why is it that there is that much success in small islands, specifically Jamaica, but you could go to St. Lucia, you could go to the Bahamas, you could go to any number of them that have had success in the Olympics. What is the difference? Is it a mental kind of thought process that happens with a Jamaican athlete, that they succeed so well on the global stage in track and field?
Hungry. People hungry. Just like you'll see in America, where a lot of kids from the inner city use sport to get out. Difference is, America have a lot more opportunities for a kid to get out, whether it's through academic scholarships, athletic scholarships, and opportunity. In these smaller Caribbean countries, there's not much infrastructure available to help that many kids come out. So they had to tap into it. Especially growing up in my era, we didn't have a lot of social media and tablets and phones, personal phones, as young kids. So our parents would be like, go outside and play. And we had to find ways. So you're going to find soccer fields. You're going to find grass tracks where people are running. We didn't start running on a synthetic track till late high school.
Yeah.
And it was only championships,
right,
or major meets. Most of the time we're on grass, dirt track, practicing and running, and it just, we now as coaches had to figure out creative ways to prepare the athletes, keep the students engaged, and create that environment that that they can be successful. Because the big thing at the time was to get a scholarship to the US. That's how we met.
Right.
Because I was pursuing track, and then at the time I was coaching under Stephen Francis. Yeah, I was his assistant when you came to Jamaica, and we built that bond, and you were instrumental. So again, thank you. I don't know if you remember this.
I do.
You're instrumental in getting me a scholarship to McKendree, connecting me with Kaba at the time and getting a scholarship to McKendree. But that's our goal, so we can get out of the poverty or the inner city, so we can come back, so we can come back and help our family.
What's one of your fondest memories growing up as a track and field athlete? Not the going to college part, but is there a memory you can think of that sticks out to you as a youth?
So I started doing track late, and I don't know if I told you, the reason I got into track and field was because of a girl.
Well, I've got sports and women with men. That's a normal thing, and probably vice versa.
Yeah, she was on the track team, and I joined the track team just to get close to her. And then she left for the US, and like 3 months later. But then just the mentorship from Poppy. Coming from the inner city, I didn't get the opportunity to travel. We didn't have much money. Mom was always working. When I was dad, he was always working. So track and field allowed me to get on buses almost every weekend to go to different parts of Jamaica to go compete. And that was what I liked. I like traveling, and I like that opportunity. And because of that, when he found out, and Poppy's so cool, when he found out that Tamika Brown was the reason I joined the track team and she left, he's like, listen, if you do your stuff, if you train hard and do the grades, you're going to see many more women that look like Tamika Brown. Say less. Like, say less. And that's the thing. It comes back to the mind, the motivation, right? When we as coaches know what drives the athletes, we're not going to use it as a carrot on a stick, but we're going to use it to help them, show them if you put in the work, the possibility of you achieving this goal increases. So I put in the work and did the schoolwork, and I got there.
And that's, I think you said growing up, I think it's getting lost a little bit on the athletes of today because there's so much social media. There's so many opportunities out there that I don't know if athletes today are as hungry necessarily overall as they were 15, 20 years ago. What do you think?
The majority is not.
Right. There's definitely ones that are. But,
yeah.
You know, they can sit and get on their phone and play games or do whatever, as opposed to going out and playing, opposed to going out and doing something. And I don't know. It's just something I've noticed over the last couple of years, really.
So that's why a mental coach like myself plays an important role, right? To, educating coaches of how to tap in. So one of the classes that I teach at McKendree is psychology of coaching. How do you get the most out of your athletes, right? Because they now have more exposure to the world through internet and social media, they realize that there's so much more that's available. And I don't just have to do sport to get out.
Right.
That's my perspective.
I could agree with you on that big time. I mean, it's tough, and I think more and more, just the changing of thought process.
Yeah,
you know, changing of coaching. So, talking about teaching a class on coaching, what are some advice to coaches would you give in dealing with your athletes that might be having an issue from a mental side of things? They're just not performing well, or they've got the yips. I watched a high school kid have the yips playing baseball last week. I mean, he couldn't hit the catcher's mitt, and he's a great pitcher, but he just. What's some advice you might be able to give to a coach? That's
most of the time when we see athletes underperforming, especially when they have had great preparation on the physical side, right? Because we're still trying to get more coaches to use the mental side, even though they may have access to the resource, they're not tapping into it. So that's one of the things I want to encourage coaches to do. But it comes back to knowing your athlete, right? Most of the time, athletes don't perform the way they want to, is because they're more thinking about outcome instead of process. So in sports psychology, we talk about process goal, performance goal, and outcome goal. The process is what helps you to get the outcome, but you really don't have control over the outcome. And if we're so focused on the outcome, most of the time, if we are not confident in what we're doing, our mind is going to lean towards the negative outcome. And when we lean to the negative outcome, most of the time we're putting too much on the ball or not enough in terms of baseball. We're trying to push too much out the blocks instead of let it come based on what you've been preparing, right? Because now we're questioning, and I need to get this start in order to beat this person instead of I need to execute this start. So it's helping the athletes as a coaches is to remind them of, one, coming back, leading with your strength. What your strengths are. Let's focus on that. What do you have control over? Because you have no control over whether you beat this person or not. What you have control over is how well you execute in terms of track and field. And if you execute well, then the byproduct of it is you beating them. Because unless you're going to step in somebody else's lane, you cannot do anything in your lane to prevent them.
Right. Have you seen that coaches are starting to understand or starting to reach out more on the mental side than maybe in years past?
Yes, they are. Which is why the education comes in, because there is a time they would just send their athletes. Now when something is going wrong, now they're more like, okay, I want you, championship is coming up. I want you to get a few sessions in. And sooner or later, we even have some coaches who are now reaching out to us at the beginning of the season of training, which is what we want.
Right.
So we can provide them with tools, because it takes 21 days to develop a habit of consistency.
Right.
And it takes 90 days to develop a lifestyle. Consistency, right? So if we can introduce these tools to our athletes consistently and give them enough time to develop, by the time they start competing, it's now starting to become a lifestyle. When I get anxious, how do I deal with this? How do I set goals that build my confidence? And now I'm more confident going into my performance. So even when I feel nervous, I already have the tools in my arsenal, so I don't have to panic because I'm feeling nervous. I know that is natural, and here are the things I'm going to do to minimize this anxiety so I can give my best performance.
I like that 2190. Those are two good numbers for people to really kind of keep in their mind on how long it takes. It's not a hey, I got a game on Friday. Let me get ready for it, on Monday or whatever it might be, because it's just, you wouldn't do that from a physical standpoint. Why in the world would you think it would happen from a mental standpoint?
You don't wait the day before to do block starts.
Right.
You work on it all and build confidence in it.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna give you five words, and I just want you to tell me the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
On these 5 words.
All right.
Anxiety.
Woo. It's natural.
Natural. Good.
Yeah.
The Olympics.
I was there.
Peak performance.
It's possible.
All right. Champion.
It's mental.
Jamaica.
Home.
I like it. Hey, simple, but I mean, I'm working on your mental side, thinking about.
Yeah. I saw it. It made me think. And that's something I never thought about. And that's why I love what I do, right?
Right.
Because my goal was always to represent Jamaica um, at the highest level. And athletically, I knew I wasn't there.
Right.
I tried to run a semester after college, after I graduated, and and I just realized, yeah, I don't have what it takes to, or didn't think I had what it takes to get there. So I decided I could do it as a coach, and had the opportunity to volunteer working with teams. But when I found sports psychology, because at Lincoln we realized we don't just prepare our athletes for the Division II championship. We had a lot of athletes who were quality enough to try out for their nation, for their country. And I realized that we would dominate throughout the season, but we got to championships and didn't quite perform the way we wanted them to.
Hmm.
And I realized that it wasn't because they weren't physically prepared. It
Hmm.
was the mental side. And at McKendree, I studied psychology and physical education. So I started implementing some of the tools I learned through psychology, and saw an improvement in performance. And that is when I went back to SIU and got my master's in kinesiology. Said, let me really tap into that. So when I graduated in 2011, I stopped coaching.
Hmm.
I decided I know, because I wanted to, I realized it was a missing component that a lot of elite level athletes, some of my elite level athletes, Olympians that come to me, have never worked with a mental coach before.
Hmm.
And I realized the difference of it. And I'm like, let me start this company. So, and I can mention this because he mentioned it on the show. I met Justin in 2010 when he was coming back into the sport. And we talked, and he's like, hey, I love what you're talking about. And we started doing some work together and had the opportunity to help him occasionally with his performance. And that's when I knew something was there. But
Hmm.
to see some of the athletes and some of the names that I've worked with over the years, amazing list. But the thing is, a lot of them don't speak publicly about it.
Right.
So because they don't speak publicly about it, the younger athletes who are watching don't know there's the component that
Right.
these athletes are using to help them take their performance to the next level, to deal with the anxiety that is normal, the nervousness that is normal. They did not realize that they don't realize that there's a component that is how the athletes are dealing with it. So they're like, I want to be as confident as this person, not knowing that you might be more confident than that person. It's just
Hmm.
that they have better ways to deal with it.
Right.
So you go into major competition and you panic because you see that person, not knowing that that person is just as nervous about you because they know the type of work you've been doing. And now you just gave them an edge because you're nervous about them.
That's the more that athletes can share and talk and just and let people understand that the physical side of things is vastly important, yes, but the
Yeah.
mental side of things, can make and break you as a competitor. I got
Yeah.
one last question to get you wrapped up on.
Okay.
If you were to look back at the younger Nicholas Powell, what advice would you give him going forward in life?
I'm gonna be honest. If I told my daughter recently, she's in college, she's a freshman in college, and I told her, I said, I wouldn't change anything in my life.
Hmm.
If I started reading books, I didn't start reading books till I got my master's. If I started reading book then, I would be tucked away in somebody's library because I am a nerd right now.
I love it.
I read a lot of books. So the advice I would say, hey, you're on the right path. You're gonna have some bumps and blows, but you're on the right path. Let's continue on that path and see you when you get here. I regret nothing, none of the mistakes, none of the failures, because everything I've done is what prepares me to be, because some of the experiences I've shared with my athletes, had I been the nerd I was supposed to be or the talented athlete, I would have never experienced that. If I was talented, I would have never went into coaching the way I did and learned the stuff I did. Right? How many people can say they have worked under the guidance of Stephen Francis?
Right.
Fran.
Right. Fran is one of the
Or
best.
been mentored by Victor Papi Thomas.
Right.
Or worked with Justin.
Right.
Have athletes who have medaled at the Olympics several times, world championships, all of that stuff.
It's experience.
Experience is what makes us who we are. So I don't regret it. I just learned from it. And if I had read one extra book and liked it, I wouldn't have been here.
Man, some deep stuff, some great stuff, some amazing advice. Professor Nicholas Powell, he's a professor at McKendree University. There's a company called The Mind Game. How can somebody reach out to you or find out more about your company?
Okay, so they can follow me on Instagram. It's The Mind Game. And also Nicholas R. Powell on Facebook. And on LinkedIn, Nicholas R. Powell. And my website is www.themindgamellc.com.
We'll make sure. I'll make sure we put all that in the
Yeah.
in the description too. Hey, thanks for joining me. It's been awesome to catch up and to hear. And I know that there's, I mean, some of the nuggets of wisdom that you just threw out there, man. I've got my notes.
What was one thing that stood out to you?
Well, I think probably the biggest part was when you're talking about the mind game itself.
Yeah.
Right. I also wrote down, lead with your strength, because I know that's how I try to coach a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of people talk about, you got to improve their weaknesses, but if you spend all your time improving somebody's weaknesses, their strengths are going to get worse, and that's what got them there. So in the words of each of the mind, I like that. I mean, they're like I said, I've got a bunch of notes, and we're gonna make some nice little shorts and clips for it, because it's
not only that with the would lead with your strengths. Think about your body language and your energy when you think about working on your weaknesses compared to the area you think you're strong in.
Absolutely.
So I never tell my athletes to work on their weaknesses. I said, work on the areas you're not so strong in.
Right.
So I try not to use the word weakness with them, because I don't want you to go into competition thinking this thing is a weakness.
I like it. That's a great point too, because then you start thinking about my weakness, and not my strengths, and not what I'm prepared for.
Yes.
Good stuff, man. See, we're even closing up and you're throwing out some nuggets. I love it. I love it.
I appreciate it.
You've been listening to Just a Cup on Bleav with your host, Bryan Fetzer. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you'll subscribe. We're on Apple, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcast, Bleav.com. And you can also follow us on YouTube if you're listening online at Coach Fetz, Just a Cup. That's where we're at. Have a great one. We'll be back with some new guests. Follow us, like, subscribe, share, and we'll bring you some more great content. Have a great one, and God bless.
Thank you.